give it up for the gaming panel.
All right, I'm going to pull us back and give you each exactly 1 minute to introduce yourself and your companies.
I'll go first. My name is Joe DePinto. I'm one of the co-founders of Haste Arcade. It's been mentioned a couple times, but we do something called instant leaderboard payouts, which I'll cover a little bit more in my presentation. And that is me.
Adam Kling, CEO and founder of Fix Gaming. Our key product is Crypto Fights right now. It's a blockchain game that runs all on layer 1. Gameplay logic, NFTs. We also built out an infrastructure that actually supports that and potentially future games in the process. We've done some of the highest peak volumes on BSV through that, and sky's the limit. We have 2.0 of Crypto Fights coming out. That's going to be massively bigger compared to what it is now, and also having a token launch. And we want to be the biggest blockchain IO system in the world, and we're not far from it. Thank you.
Brenton Gunning, CEO of Run. Run is a token and smart contract solution on BSV. It's powering Fix and Haste and some other games that are out there. And we've done a little over 500 million transactions in the past, since our genesis. And so our focus is to make it easier to develop tokens and smart contracts compared to other blockchains.
My name is Tyler Farnsworth. I'm the CMO of Built by Gamers, an eSports and gaming lifestyle organization. And we focus on rostering competitive eSports teams and creating a considerable amount of gaming content. We generate well over 30 million views a month on our gaming content today, and we are at the early stages of integrating blockchain technology in a platform that helps solve a lot of the problems that exist in eSports today.
Thank you, guys. So Adam, can you help explain why blockchain is a relevant technology in gaming and what you guys are doing to bring blockchain to the gaming industry?
Sure. So, been a long time gamer. I remember a lot of the evolutions of gaming. Started with the consoles. Was a big PC gamer, and as they kind of went through these kind of big changes, the first thing was multiplayer, or could actually interact and do things with other players online. Graphics got really good, but now where we are, we have VR and all that. Didn't really like it. And so I think blockchain is going to really innovate and push us into maybe the next big thing. So we were talking more on this panel on NFTs. NFTs are really collectibles, digital assets. I think we're going to have economies that actually have real value in it. I think we're going to be able to have games talk to each other or interact with each other. You do one thing in one game and something else happens in another game. And I think that's going to be the next big thing with gaming, and that's primarily where our heads are at.
Brenton, people have been really excited about interoperability in games for a long time. You hear that in all kinds of conferences like this. Why has interoperability been so elusive in the gaming world?
Well, games actually have a long history of interoperability. Going back to early 90s, Doom, you could mod Doom. That's a form of interoperability. You take the art and the gameplay and you can change an existing game in some interesting way. The challenge is that a game has to decide to be interoperable. They have to decide to be open, and not every game makes that choice. Historically, games are an entertainment, they're an art-heavy industry. Being very IP-heavy, they want to protect that IP, and so it's not natural for a company to want to open themselves up and allow third parties to create communities and create content for them. So a game has to choose to do that, and not everyone does. So I think one part of it is that we're just early. But if you look at the games that do decide to open up and become interoperable with other games, they have a much longer lifespan and a much larger community than games that don't do that. The example of Doom is interesting because just this past year, there was the map artist that created the original Doom levels released a new level to support the war in Ukraine, and people are buying that and playing it on a 30-year-old game. You can't do that with most games. And so the trend towards interoperability exists already. It actually exists in blockchain already, and I expect that the companies that take the leap to do that will see the rewards over a long time.
So Tyler, what does esports have to do with this? Why would an esports organization be trying to leverage blockchain technology?
Yeah. The gaming industry represents over $200 billion annually worldwide, which is larger than the film and sports industries, or film and music industry combined. There's a lot of money in that. With that, esports is only a segment of that, and relatively nascent, growing, emerging segment there. There are a lot of issues that we need to solve. The transparency issue in terms of cheating and anti-cheating payouts for professional and amateur players, and doing that effectively, cross-border, cross-currency, ensuring that content and content creators are compensated and that the rights and IP holders are compensated appropriately as well. Because in gaming, if unlike other things that exist out there, you can't just use that IP that exists on your content and in other spaces. So we are seeing that blockchain is solving or can solve a lot of the issues that currently exist in that space and can unlock an immense amount of value that is currently being restricted based upon the legacy systems that exist.
Joe, I know that we've heard, just today, people bring up the idea of ILP, 4 or 5 times already. Can you give us, a true explanation of what is ILP and how Haste is using blockchain to change the way that gamers are experiencing the types of games that they would find on your platform?
Yeah, so the typical example I'll give is who here has been to like a classic arcade, played Pac-Man, pinball, whatever? Probably everyone, right? In the old days, you'd play the game, you got on Leaderboard, you got to put like your initials on there, and maybe a month you come back, later and you see your initials still up there, and that's the entire value that you got from that. Well, because of blockchain and because of these abilities of micropayments now, what we've created, these instant leaderboard payouts, is you can take that quarter in the same way that Zach has been pinging us all, a fraction of a penny, and you can now split that quarter hundreds, if not thousands of different ways. So you go play that retro Pac-Man game now, you get on a leaderboard that's 100 people long. Anytime someone spends a quarter after you, you're going to get a fraction of that gameplay. So really what you're doing is you're able to gamify not just like video games and whatnot, but you have other things in the real world that you could now apply this concept to. So you're basically gamifying anything that you can do because of this ability to use micropayments. Things that people are already doing casually, playing a game, do I want to go and spend a penny or 10 cents, and if I do well in this game, I might actually have the chance to earn from that. That's what our concept is, and that's how we're using the blockchain.
And Joe, do you have any stats on some of the people who have been maybe more successful on Haste, what kind of money they can make through this model?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, when it started, the original game was really simple. Like, you would basically tap play game, you'd choose if you're playing for a penny or a dime, and your phone screen would go blank, a little dot would pop up, and the whole game was just tap the dot as fast as you can. Your score was measured in milliseconds. Well, there were people that went on to, and this is like just towards the end of the first major wave of the pandemic, there are people that ended up going on making hundreds of dollars a month. One of them actually has made a couple $1,000s just from these hyper-casual, penny to dime level gameplays. So there's real money that people are making, doing this type of thing, and that's still with what we would consider a fairly small user base. But yeah, I mean, it's significant income if you're actually, consistently playing and getting on leaderboards.
Adam, play to earn is a big topic. Play to earn often utilizes NFTs in some way. I know that there's concerns in the gaming world that NFTs, play to earn, these aren't about having fun, delivering fun, they're about something else. What excites you about NFTs for games, and what would you say to people who have those types of concerns?
Yeah, so I got into the blockchain gaming space in beginning of 2018, and if anyone remembers, there's a site called DApp Radar that would actually list all of the different games. They were really kind of Ponzi and experiments at the time, but that's probably the bad of it, is that they were really more about extracting money. They weren't really very entertaining, and it was all about how to make money from it. So it wasn't, it's a very different paradigm from where, for me growing up, games were about entertainment, they were about challenge, maybe community. And so this kind of merging of this play and earn, which is kind of the new thing, play to earn, is really a very dynamic subject that I think it's going to change dramatically. Tokenomics, NFTs, like all of these things, especially with our game, we're looking at it more, especially because of regulation, but more of a utility, is that the NFT or the token that we use is actually used to play the game, not to speculate on. So you can actually, just like his arcade example, you need the token to do things in the game. You can trade with other people on their NFTs. Now, NFTs are really a nerdy way to say a sword or a armor or whatever it is. And when I pass it to someone else, there's history, there's maybe value because I did something with that item. So I think as we kind of go through this industry, especially if I have anything to do with it, is to make these things probably more boring. to where people don't say they're NFTs. They're a game or an item in a game that I traded with someone. They're a fungible token, or really a arcade token, a CryptoFights token that they can use to go to the enchanter to do something with an item to make it more powerful. And they won't really think about NFTs at all at that point. So I think going forward in this industry, I think that's where it needs to go. I don't know if that's where it is going to go, but that's where I want it to go, because playing a game, you're not thinking about like if you think about, I'm gonna kind of date myself here, but garbage pail kids or baseball cards or anything like that. You don't buy them to basically flip. You buy them because you like them, and I think the same thing's going to happen with games. If you're a level 100 warlock in World of Warcraft, it's going to have value because of effort and time that you put into it, not because of what the market's going to bear.
Joe, as far as I'm aware, Haste Arcade, I think, is the first company to integrate NFTs into hyper-casual titles. Why'd you guys decide to do that? What do NFTs serve to Haste players?
I think there's a couple of different, there are a couple of different ways that we use NFTs within the arcade itself. But within the gameplays, it just seemed like a natural fit, right? You already have things like skins that get released in Call of Duty, and people will go and buy those. Like, it's basically the same thing, like Adam was just saying. It's a fancy word for a sword. But the other aspect that I think is not quite as consumer-facing is that we are using this now, this NFT marketplace where, if I'm playing this game called Lost, I have a spaceship and I'm flying around shooting these asteroids. Well, there's now ways for third-party creators to create content that they can now sell on our marketplace. And, some of them might go on to make a lot of money from that, but the majority, it's like, this is just a passion project. It's gaming. It's fun. It's something that people might just want to do in their spare time. Hey, I like this game. I can actually go and create basically my own skin and sell it. And people now have a market where they can buy it. And again, it's micropayments. Maybe they're only selling them for $1 or 50 cents. But we just saw that as a pretty easy opportunity to, continue the theme of like, blockchain with utility. What can you actually do with this stuff, as opposed to just buying a JPEG and hoping that someone else is going to pay more for it? Like, I think it's pretty cool when you can actually create something and basically load it into the game in your own form of an NFT and use it. That's what the original vision was, and that's what we built out.
Yeah, I think that advertising is so expensive, gaming is so competitive, that if you can enable a creator economy in your game, that's a huge advantage in terms of lowering your customer acquisition costs and getting more and more players. Tyler, there's been a ton of esports organizations that have partnered with different NFT companies or promoted NFTs in one way or another. Do you think there's a future for NFTs in esports, and what do you make of what's happened so far with that partnership?
Yeah. So by and large, it's been terrible, frankly. The groups that have done it have come out in a way that seemed scammy, that seemed like it was taking advantage of their relatively young user base in many cases. They have not had a well thought out strategy. It's been focused almost entirely on value go up mentality, right? It's a collectible that someone puts money into on slow chains or very expensive chains. And so by and large, the esports industry is actually, and organizations have walked that back because they've seen that it's not received well. They've had a lot of backlash around it. Even the term NFT, I think, needs a rebranding, which is excited to see some of the changes you guys have made.
Thank you.
But the world of digital goods and collectibles, is just explained by Joe and Adam here, has a massive future. And so for us, we're seeing that there's so much opportunity in the utility-based digital good, and those opportunities that those unlock versus what's been done in the space thus far. So where our head is at, and the things that we're working on right now, are elements that open up. It's an NFT that is connected to the player, and that that's what allows them to track all of what's going on and receive payouts and verify their entry that they are who they say they are. There's opportunity for access to events and different unique opportunities there. There's opportunities to showcase their level of fandom within the ecosystem and track that appropriately over time. Right. So there's so much that is being built and absolutely will occur and exist in this space, but it's much, much beyond the simple things like you see out in the lobby there.
Brenton, I think the first time we ever spoke, one of the topics of conversation was Flow and Flow blockchain. Flow, if anyone doesn't know, is the team behind CryptoKitties. What do you think how would you describe what's happened in blockchain and in the NFT landscape from maybe more of a technical perspective since the end of 2017, when the CryptoKitties fiasco essentially ended the crypto bull run?
Yeah, it's super interesting. So 2017, CryptoKitties takes down the entire Ethereum networks. It's one app with, frankly, not that many transactions, and they took down all of Ethereum. The team behind that, after that event, looked at Ethereum and said, okay, is this going to scale for us in the future? We don't want this to happen again. And they looked at where Ethereum was planning to go and where it's going today. They're actually going through a merge right now, one phase of a longer roadmap. And they said, this isn't going to work for us. And there's a number of reasons for it. The trends are interesting. So one thing is Ethereum is planning to shard their network. That means they're splitting Ethereum into many Ethereums, in fact, 32 Ethereums. And so what that means is that if you have your assets in one game on one shard, it takes work to move it to another shard to use in a different game. This creates a technical nightmare. It also creates a usability nightmare for the end user. So CryptoKitties team looked at this. They're called Dapper Labs and said, well, this isn't going to work for us. Let's see what we can do different. And they created the Flow blockchain. The Flow blockchain does not shard their network. And interestingly, BSV also does not shard their network. One network that massively scales. That's also a trend you see on Solana. It's also a trend you see on some of the more recent blockchains that are getting funding. But by and large, the vast majority of other blockchains don't take that approach. So this is a very forward-thinking way of building blockchains. The other way that Flow is different, and this also applies to BSV, is they have individually owned assets on that blockchain. So on Ethereum, everything is a smart contract. On Bitcoin, on Flow, you have individually owned assets that you control as a user. It's a nicer model to program for, frankly. So you're seeing this evolution towards easier to use, more secure, more scalable blockchains that BSV fits nicely into.
Adam, you've been outspoken for a while, both through what you've said in interviews as well as what you guys have done as a company about the potential pitfalls when you're utilizing blockchain solutions in general, but in your case, in games. What mistakes do you think other companies that are trying to leverage blockchain are often making?
Yeah, well, I mean, we started on Ethereum. It was in 2018, and this was kind of starting with the layer 2 solutions. So basically, from that example, you're doing too much stuff, so you got to put it somewhere else. We started experimenting with that, and everything that we built, we had to build more. There was no end to the solutions that we had to keep providing. Now, again, this was years ago, but I think we've been vindicated. We ended up moving to BSV, and by doing that, it just dramatically changed how we thought about building on blockchain. So, looking back at that time period, CryptoKitties moved. You had Axie Infinity, which is another one, big game. They had to basically move to run in their own chain. There's a lot of projects that kind of make a lot of money fast, and then when they actually get the users, then they have to go figure out how to actually scale. And so the infrastructure that we actually had to start pioneering on BSV kind of taught us a lot about scale. And the second part of your question is that if you do start building, are you building for success or short term? And we have been trying to do gameplay on-chain, which is this kind of holy grail. No one can do on-chain gameplay. It's pretty much like NFT transfers, drops, and stuff like that. I mean, we're actually you do this in the game and it actually goes on-chain. And so I think, going forward, I've been hearing 100,000 users. If we can do that, we're the biggest blockchain in the world, period. When that happens, all of these other solutions, all these other technologies start to not make sense. And I mentioned the blockchain IO system is really how you have to look at this. Is that when you start to do more data, gigabyte. We're in gigabytes now. When we start doing terabytes, petabytes, I mean, it's bigger than everything that we can conceive today. And I think that is something that if you are starting out today, you have a little bit of I guess, good luck to have to see what happened already. To build very long term. You need to have long-term thinking that if you're going to be successful, that you can actually have a roadmap. I mean, not everything's figured out, I'll admit that, but I mean, from when we started, I mean, one of our peaks was like 500,000 transactions in a day. And then we started doing millions and millions, and we hit 10 million. And that's small. Like, we know that's not that much. So there has to be a way forward. And we've heard a lot of discussion here about proof of stake, proof of work, and the actual, you could say the stability of that chain. Is it going to be around 10 years, right? I mean, imagine you did have all these customers. That's actually what happened to Axie Infinity. they had millions of daily active users that they had to jump ship off their basically their tech stack. And when they did that, I don't know if anyone has followed that story, but they got hacked and lost $600 million. And they went from 3 million daily active users to below 1 million. I think they're probably at half right now. So they completely crashed their company because of that risk. And there's a lot of VCs that piled into that because it was such an easy investment. They're on their highs. But those things happen, and I mean, that's especially where my head's at, is that if I am going to be successful, I don't want to have to crash and burn. So that's what I would advise anybody, is to really understand the tech that you're building on.
Yeah, and I want to credit you at well before the actual hack that Axie Experience happened, I remember you in interviews talking about some of the dangers of using bridges, building on layer 2s, and how that was seen as a solution to blockchain scalability, essentially do as little on a blockchain as possible and then port over to a more scalable system, with kind of like the scaling properties of legacy systems. But when you're making that type of transition, funky stuff can happen, $600 million, gets taken. And so I think that the solution that you guys have come up with, or at least what you guys have done in terms of trying to do everything on a blockchain that scales and not having to build these bridges, is really the way forward.
Can I mention one more thing? Also, you got to think about the security, right? I mean, Axie had NFTs, right? There were items in the game that I think it was billions and millions of dollars in market cap. Now, a lot of their users lost a lot of money. I mean, these are people like in the Philippines that lost their life savings, and very, very sad stories, that you started coming out of that. And so that's another thing that you would also have to think about, is that what am I going to do about users' assets, the value of it? And if it just goes poof one day from a stupid security thing that we did, that's major. And I would say that's probably when the regulators are going to come in, right? Yeah. You screw up, billions of dollars of value for people. I mean, that seems like it's a scream for regulation, So security matters.
Tyler, we've talked a bit about, why NFTs, blockchain is relevant to the esports world in general. Can you maybe elaborate more and share more about specifically what BBG is doing with blockchain?
Yeah, you bet. So our larger vision is that we're building a platform that allows us to manage player contracts and that whole process, trades, tournaments and payouts, community and fan engagement, as well as advertising attribution. So right now what we have developed is a community and fan engagement platform, and we're working on the advertising attribution. I spent the past decade in Fortune 100 advertising, and I understand that the revenue model that supports esports today is highly advertising driven. And we have to do more than just showcase eyeballs and impressions and brand lift. We have to showcase what those impressions are doing for people, and blockchain allows us to do that. Our key product right now is a fan engagement platform. We know that these esports companies rely on fans. And so think about like any sports team you follow. Imagine if you received a reward for every game you watched, game you attended, tweet you sent, post you liked for your favorite sports team of choice. The way that esports teams make money is very similar to the way any traditional sports team makes money. And if we can showcase data back and we can reward you for being a fan, there's an immense amount of value there. So what we've launched is a current platform that allows Built by Gamers fans to have an account. It's associated through a Handcash wallet today, and it allows them to be rewarded for their fandom. And there's a whole bunch of fun elements and access and digital assets that we are deploying out to the fan base today. It's just in its infancy. We've done some projects here with the Haste Arcade, and are launching some new things here soon. But that's the core of this platform that's being built.
Joe, kind of looped you in there. Can you share more about what you guys have done with BBG?
Yeah, so obviously Tyler hit on how many people are viewing their content creators on a monthly basis, and for us, that's incredible exposure directly to the market that we want to get. We want to get the people who are watching games and probably playing casual games into our ecosystem. So the most recent campaign was with a game launch that we did. We basically, Tyler and we worked together, targeted 4 of their streamers and said these people would have good followings to promote this hyper-casual game that you could earn from too. So they went on, they did a week-long campaign where before they would go and play, I think it was Fortnite, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, before their Fortnite stream, they'd announce, hey guys, you can come and play against me in this thing called the Haste Arcade. Here's a link to a game called Jump. All you have to do is play, and if you get on a leaderboard, you're going to get, payouts from everyone that's going to play after us. So what we got, and I'm kind of getting into some stats for my next presentation, but basically we found that 40% of the people that were watching those streams ended up converting and playing. And compared to other paid social media advertising that we're doing, which we're still seeing really good results on, I mean, that's just unheard of. When we're able to work with esports organizations like that and get right to the core demographic that we want, and they're listening to someone that they already trust, they're watching these Twitch streamers that they've basically built relationships with, through watching them play, they're much more likely to then go ahead and take these people's advice and go and try these hyper-casual games. So I think it's been really cool so far. We got some more stuff coming up with them.
All right, just a couple more quick questions before lunch. Brenton, imagine you were speaking with a game developer that wanted to integrate blockchain in a game that they're building for the first time. How would you advise them?
Well, number one, as a gamer, the game should be fun. So set aside the blockchain for a minute and just focus on your gameplay. That's probably the most important part. But assuming you have that, games have always pushed technology forward. That's the history of what games have done. And in the case of blockchain, you would want to look at, okay, what blockchains actually scale for what I need to do, and have the fees and the downtime, the hopefully no downtime, that I would expect and need for my game. There aren't that many blockchains out there that can do that right now. In fact, the whole gaming industry is not settled on a single blockchain for NFTs, tradables, collectibles, etc. The other factor is the onboarding experience. Because if you go play some of the leading blockchain games today, the first step they ask you to do is to install a wallet and go to an exchange and buy the coin. This is just not practical for a lot of gamers. And so I think it should be easier to get started, play the game, and then at the point that you're ready to do something that requires a blockchain, maybe that's where you take the step. Maybe you watch an advertisement before you can transfer your item to a friend, who knows, but make it easy to get into the game first. That would also be my other piece of advice for game developers.
Joe, giving you the last word here. What's the ceiling for blockchain games?
I think because of micropayments, it's almost limitless. I mean, we're doing hyper-casual games, but I think what you can do with micropayments, like I said earlier, is you can gamify everything. So it's funny, I just met, is Nicola here? Or is he anywhere in the audience? Anyways, the guy has a tremendous mustache, okay? You could basically create a game now where you're competing against other people with mustaches. And then I see this dude over here who also has a tremendous mustache. So it's is that something people would spend hundreds of dollars on to compete? Maybe, if it's that good. But basically, you can take any event now because of these micropayments and turn it into a game. Another example I'll give, and that'll be the last one, would be an educational setting. So we have a game right now in the arcade, and basically it's called Keyboard Warrior. You're just typing, and you're increasing your typing speed and skill. So if you misspell a word, you don't get to go to the next word. But you're doing this, and if you're actually one of the best people at typing, you can now monetize that ability. So, you have the whole educational realm as well, which I think you can gamify. And that's just, I think these are just the very surface of what we're getting at.